Yes, this being the final phase, we have experienced and are still experiencing fortunate results in the private housing sector. Of course, we rely heavily on the public housing because the incomes of these people, by and large, make them eligible for public housing. But still, a number of them go into private housing, and we've received excellent cooperation from the builders and owners, managers of rental housing. So we see no difficulty there.
Is the housing situation still as critical as it was, say, a year ago?
I believe it's loosened up a little bit. We're finding more housing now and we're able to give the tenants who live in the property that we purchase more of a choice.
We are told that this legislation is a political necessity. It may well be, but that does not mean that it serves the best interest of North Carolina. I am convinced that it does not.
Now, if I thought this bill was purely a political expedient, then I would doubt very much that it would have much appeal for me. I do not think, and I happen to think, perhaps I'm in a minority, that this is going to do the thing politically that many people here feel. I do think that it's going to enlarge educational opportunity in North Carolina.
You know, this project had the millions and six tenths, $1,600,000 allocated and reserved before we got into the tight money pinch. The money, the same kind of money, for the First Ward, Dilworth, Greenville, and downtown projects is still problematical. It's still a matter of speculation as to when we might get approval of one of those projects. We're certainly still hoping that we'll get approval of the first one, which I hope will be Greenville, before the year's out. However, we have no assurance whatsoever that this will be the case.
Since this program is quite different from most programs operated by the state. That is, we are undertaking to help to provide employment for people. I am just wondering if it would not be more advisable to leave the money entirely at the disposition of the commission. I say this not because I'm a member of the commission, but because here is a working program that needs to have some leeway in the operation.
Director of Administration himself has stated that the transfer of the funds is proper. It had been recommended a long time ago, and it just now happened. And they ought to be transferred and controlled and kept for uses of the blind people in this state. We've had $545,000 and probably more stuck around in banks of this state, and it has not been able to be used for the good of the blind people.
There's been a tremendous lack, and I'm disturbed over it because with a 10-man delegation up here, the largest in the state of North Carolina, I don't feel that we have been as effective as we could have been if we had have had this man to stay with us, help us with our bills, help us be a go-between. It'll cost Mecklenburg County something, I know this.
This would then be paid for by the county.
That's right. I'm talking about a talented lawyer, someone that could come up here and have a dedication for Mecklenburg and want to help Mecklenburg and to help us.
We're a large delegation. Would you like to see us do more moving as a block, as a group?
I think our delegation should move as a block on every question. And then we would be the one that they would respect more. I'm talking about the people from the East. Because when one man stands from the East, all of them stand. They're all wired together.
The employees of OEO programs such as Operation Breakthrough are down in these areas dealing with the poor people. They should be trying to raise their standard of living, and if we have any loophole whatsoever in the law, which I'm not sure that we do, then they open up all kinds of doors for political involvement, like we had in Durham, where they actually registered people, copied registration lists, carried them to the polling place, and told them how to vote. And it could have it could have determined the election in a city the size of Durham, North Carolina, or any other city in the United States.
Today's speedy action was in sharp contrast to the bitter fight that took place yesterday when the House gave tentative second reading approval. The only legislator to speak out against the measure was Representative Bill Mooney of Cleveland. He merely asked the legislators to consider the bill with a clear mind and suggested they vote against it because it is not a local bill. Mooney's short speech cleared the way for the vote that went for the bill by a count of 70 to 26. Thus, the measure passed the lower chamber with relative ease. Yesterday, the Mecklenburg lawmakers held a strategy session to decide what to do about the bill on the Senate side. With the last meeting of the Senate Finance Committee scheduled for this morning, there were fears that the bill might be shunted to the Calendar Committee, and that, according to the figuring of Mecklenburg senators, would be bad. The Senate contingent felt the bill might receive rougher handling in Calendar than in Finance. Senators Martha Evans and Charles Maxwell were at the Finance meeting early today, prepared to battle the matter out there if necessary on the spot. But assurances from Committee Chairman Ralph Scott that the bill would be retained in Finance and that Finance would meet again next week to consider it made the lawmakers holding off on bringing up the matter today. In general, the Senate is considered less friendly to the Mecklenburg local option sales tax bill, and it's likely a lot of spade work is ahead if the measure is to move through with anywhere near the comfortable margin it enjoyed in the House. Bill Ballard, WBTV News at the General Assembly.
I know, and so do a lot of the others here in the Senate, that when those rules and regulations were filed by the ABC Board, there was a meeting held at the request of a number of the members of the Senate, and I was not among them. And they requested Ray Brady to redraw his rules and regulations in order that this could be done, that mixed drinks could be served. Now, the point that I make is simply this. We know that the ABC board will have trouble enforcing the brown bagging bill which we passed. I have to assume that the position that Mr. Brady will take is that the stricter the rules and regulations, the easier the enforcement. And with a shortage of personnel, in my opinion, he will certainly draw as tight a rules and regulations as he can immediately after we leave Raleigh sometime, which I hope will be sometime next week. And I think that it would be one of the reasons that I suggested this adjournment until February of 1968, reconvening, I think, second Wednesday.
True that in eastern North Carolina and even in the extreme west that our university is doing work and extending services, but their strength is not undiminished as it goes out over this long state of ours. And we feel like it would be a great step forward, and it is not something that would harm the university, but we think would be working hand in hand with the university.
They ought to hear the officials of East Carolina, the officials of Appalachian, and any other interested party in as quick a time as they can, and that if the proponents of this thing do not want to wait till the next General Assembly, that a special session of the General Assembly ought to be called to decide this in the political arena.
Mrs. Riddick, what instructions did you give the persons who carried out the voter registration drive?
They were advised to knock on doors, advised people that they were from the Neighborhood Service Center, the Charlotte Area Fund Neighborhood Service Center, and that they were there to talk with them about their becoming full citizens and their accepting a real role in the city of Charlotte. They were told not to talk about partisan politics, not to discuss one party or another party, but just to let people know they were interested in getting their names on the books, getting them registered.
Jack, this is the one thing that has impressed me is the fairness and appropriateness of the hearings. No one's been out to prosecute or try Senator Dodd for the violation of any law, but rather he's on trial for the violation of the propriety of using personally funds that were collected for political campaigns. And I thought as a new senator coming here that a member of the club, they'd all look out for each other here, but they've been very conscientious to uphold the charge in the first article of the United States Constitution that we should from time to time determine what disorderly behavior is, and we shouldn't be using our offices for personal gain. And I think this is what's an issue, and I think they'll make a judgment shortly.
This being the case, we have no alternative but to fight as long and as vigorously as we can any commission-ordered reduction of that rate. And we say this with a real sense of regret. It's a real regret that we face the prospect of possible long, extended, bitter, and expensive litigation with some of you who have been our valued customers. We recognize your legal right to bring this proceeding, and in giving you these facts, we've tried to be as factual and as objective as we can. We certainly don't mean to imply any threat on our part. None is intended.
I hope so. I know that there will be opposition by the governor. As I stated in the committee, I can fully understand his opposition and to our coming here every year. And if he had his druthers, as the fellow said, I expect he'd rather we not come up here at all. But I do feel that the members of the General Assembly have been given fair notice on this bill. They can see the merits of it, and I anticipate passage of the bill.
I'm hopeful that we can get the bill enacted this year. And that's important because land prices are going up each year, and the states need to move in securing the rights of way.
Now, what could this parkway mean to western North Carolina?
This will be one of the most beautiful sections of the Blue Ridge Parkway. It will go near the towns of Highlands and Cashiers. It will go by many beautiful waterfalls. And I think that it will bring millions of additional visitors from the southeastern states into western North Carolina.
I think we can understand it best to see the order. The order, in effect, is if the owners of private property near a military installation refuse to rent the property to Negro military personnel, white military personnel are forbidden to rent the property themselves. So in order to force it's economic coercion. If this order becomes general throughout the country, it could be applied to areas around Fort Bragg, areas around Camp Lejeune, and areas around Cherry Point. To my mind, it's a peculiar thing for the Secretary of Defense to take and try to make a law himself when he has no legislative authority, because Congress refused to pass a law of this nature itself. If we're going to have any freedom in this country, people have to be free to act wisely or foolishly, and not to have those decisions all made for them by the government. And certainly, if we're going to be free, we must have the right of private property and the right to use our property as we see fit, even though it may not please our neighbor or may not please some public official.
This ministry is necessary because our communities in the urban culture are changing. People are more transient, moving in and out. Communities are changing economically, racially, and culturally. And the church is more or less bewildered by what's happening. We don't understand what's happening, and so we've got to do some study in this area. The inner city ministry really is an attempt to make the church relevant in a changing community. We have to discover what the needs are and how the church, situated in a particular community, can meet these needs. The people in some of our urban communities are rather bewildered by the changes. People are lonely and there's a sense of lostness. We want the church to find a way to minister to the needs of specific people in these communities. We hope to involve the church in the daily lives of people, not just in the Sunday morning worship service, but where they live and what their problems are where they live. What we hope to achieve is really a sense of relevancy for the church in a local community. We're not going in with any predetermined program that is working toward a specific set of goals that we've already predetermined, but our main objective will be to find what the mission of the church is and then to move in to meet this need as we discover it. Well, we hope to begin by coordinating with about 6 or 8 of the smaller churches in the inner city area to discover what the needs of a particular community are, and once we've discovered those needs, to find out how we can move to meet them. Now, this may mean tutorial services for children. It may mean some relief or counseling work, some referral work. It may mean setting up some clinics for legal aid, medical aid, these kinds of things.
Well, I think it's rather unique to notice, and I have here before me a statement made by Lieutenant Governor Scott. He said that the creation of any university should be determined on the basis of need, keeping ever in mind the academic and educational feasibility of such a decision. The ultimate decision is not and must not be purely a political one. And if this decision on the regional university bill hasn't been brought about by pure politics, with the Eastern Democrats threatening to pull out of the Democratic Party in '68, I know of no other time in the history of North Carolina that the development of higher education has been more injected into politics than in this regional university bill. Thus, the leadership of the Democratic Party 4.5 weeks ago told the state of North Carolina one thing, and now is telling the state of North Carolina another, and based on the needs of trying to heal the wounds within their ranks.
Any official Republican position towards the regional universities?
No, I think both Democrats and Republicans are in the like position on this bill. We have Democrats who do not favor the bill as well as Republicans. But as you know, many of the Republican representatives come from the western part of the state. They don't want to vote against their local colleges becoming universities, and yet they realize that if they do vote for the bill, that they are actually voting for a politically motivated bill. Thus, frankly, I don't think there's any definite position as far as a Republican position goes. We're in a quandary, just like many Democrats are. I think there is no question about the bill being motivated primarily from a political standpoint rather than an educational standpoint. I'm sure the people in North Carolina look upon us down here with some amazement on this issue because I've heard many people say we've taken too much time on it. A little over 4.5 weeks ago, the people of North Carolina were told that any change in our higher education system at this time was uncalled for because we needed to wait until the next General Assembly to get our studies made, which are in the process of being made, that there were no other schools or colleges at the time who were able at this time to scholastically meet the requirements of a university standing, and the issue was purportedly settled with the death of the independent university status for East Carolina College. Now Senator Hindley comes back with a bill which makes regional universities possible in this state and adds 2 other colleges with it in order to try to get some basis of support statewide. Many of the legislators down here earnestly know that this bill is not good, that it is politically motivated to try to appease some of the Democratic leaders in the East and calm the waters down there. And yet they realize to vote against this bill is sort of like voting against motherhood. You'll be voting against education, they say. And thus there's a reluctance to vote against the bills, and yet there's a genuine belief that the bill is bad and politically motivated. Thus they're in a box as to what to do.
I'm sure that a case can be made for the benefits of each bill, and it would help us considerably if some of you would indicate to us why this situation has come about. I'm sure you can see the reason that we have to oppose these 3 bills when all we can see are the direct effect of shrinkage of our tax base and the creation of a precedent for all sorts of similar preferential bills in the future. But we would sincerely welcome from you any enlightenment on the merits of these bills, because frankly we can use all the help you can give us in explaining the causes of any resulting tax rate increases. Not to deal with those other officers, the other constitutional officers that you've mentioned, but just with this particular
Well, the
elected
question
office.
was
I am extremely pleased with the recommendations of the Appropriations Subcommittee as far as funds for University of North Carolina at Charlotte are concerned.
Funds that the university wanted, but it wasn't recommended in the advisory budget commission's
No, they didn't recommend, didn't restore most of the funds. But I would say that none of the funds were restored from many institutions, and I think that we were most fortunate in our restorations.
This whole council is standing on a technicality, and I hope anybody involved will remember it. You're standing on a technicality when I sit here in front of the press and everybody and say I made an error, I made a slip of tongue, that I did not intend to vote this way. And on this technicality, you're making a ruling. I think it's most unfair. I think it's unjust.
Tuttle indeed to have an opportunity to vote as he intended to. Mr. Kaiser has said that this can be arranged at some subsequent meeting, and I am delighted and insist that this be done. But I believe if we try to wiggle out of this today, we will get into a legal situation where we will have killed this petition, and the only side that could prevail would be Mr. Tuttle's side, and he was the one that made the original miscue.
Point was made in the committee hearing today that we would be in a position to give a 15% increase for the first year and a 10% for the second year at a cost of approximately $27 million.
Well, I feel somewhat like I did when I was a little boy. I can remember my mother coming in to give me a spoonful of medicine. Whether I liked it or not, I knew I had to take it because she was the final authority. So she'd hold that nose and I'd take the medicine. And that's just about what happened today. In a matter of just a couple of hours, they have asked us to let them use a fast spoon and shovel a whole appropriations bill down our throats.
There were very few changes made in your B budget request for additional staff personnel. As I remember, the University at Charlotte has gotten and will get a new Dean of Arts and Sciences, several new professors, and stenographic positions. A residence for the Chancellor has been approved, and I think that we've had a good year. We have revised the formula for allocation of funds to our community colleges, and this has been our biggest drawback in that the formula was based on a premise of X number of students in community colleges, and we have had a much larger number in Central Piedmont, and as a result we have year by year suffered more and more from shortage of funds, and we have come up with a new formula for allocation of funds that will be most beneficial to our college in Charlotte.
Well, we gave a $23 million tax cut a few weeks ago. At least a portion of that could have been reserved for teacher salaries, and the other major area from which funds could have come would have been in the area of capital improvements, which it's always open to question as to what portion of capital improvements should revenues and what proportion should be financed out of a bond issue.
I don't think that that the theater is giving these days the public music to react to. That is, great songs that we had just a few years back from Lerner and Lowe and from Dick Rogers, where the music itself will pick an audience up and thrill it. The music seems to be getting more and more part of the dialogue.
Why is that?
There's a preoccupation with the dramatic part of a musical show, which somehow has taken away from the emphasis on the music almost completely. There are a few musical shows. The Man from La Mancha is playing in New York and is standing room only and has been ever since it opened. And that is an extremely dramatic show with very fine music. But again, not songs that you go away humming.
Does this trend disturb you at all as musical performers?
Tremendously.
Yes, it does.
Tremendously.
Because, see, Lois and I like to do shows where we can use our voices. I think it's kind of, trends come and go. You know, even as we're sitting here talking, probably somebody's writing some big hit musical with a lot of good music in it. There's no way to put your finger on
It's
it.
the
I can
power of
only
positive
hope.
thinking.
Yes, I think positively because it's early in the morning and I haven't realized what a bad day it is yet.
I would like for any member of this House to tell me one reason why, when the people of counties express preferences to us, and when the granting of those preferences does not adversely affect the overall plan, why we should not recognize those preferences and do for them what they ask that we do for them.
Well, of course, the bill, as we finally ended up with the amendment that was passed, seems to be the only one that we had a chance to carry out the wishes of the most people that have written us in Raleigh, and that was to the effect that they didn't want to see Congressman Whitener and Congressman Jonas pitted against each other.
The 9th district in which we will be located is an absurd thing. It stretches from the South Carolina line almost all the way up to Virginia. We have absolutely nothing in common with Wilkes County and Iredell County, which will be in our new district. It's obviously done for political reasons and to protect certain incumbents in Congress rather than to represent the wishes of the people. I think the Democrats had conceded that Whitener could not beat Jonas, so they decided to put Whitener in with Broyhill instead and give him a Democratic district to run from. And I think that's the only reason they did it.
In your opinion, would the court pass this plan?
Absolutely not. In my opinion, we're going to force the federal court to do something that we should be doing ourselves.
Mecklenburg County's local bill for a vote to raise the sales tax rate a penny was assured full Senate consideration when the Senate Calendar Committee voted it out favorably. The committee split was 5-2, but several of the measure's supporters in committee indicated they had some reservations about the bill and might vote against it on the floor. Most of the committee discussion ranged, as earlier debate has elsewhere, around the implications of the Mecklenburg tax on other counties. Montgomery Senator Jeff Allen said such a bill for Mecklenburg would have statewide implications and would force his district's people to finance Mecklenburg's improvements that would work to their disadvantage. He used teacher supplements as an example. Mecklenburg Senator Herman Moore, a committee member, held the line, and the bill passed out to the full Senate, where it will likely be brought up later this week. Only Senate action separates the bill from full enactment now. Ken Alvord, WBTV News at the General Assembly.
Hopefully we will serve between 4,000 and 5,000 young people during the coming summer. It's not just a busy recreation program, although recreation is a great part of it. Schools out, you have a great deal of inactivity, and inactivity, particularly among low-income or disadvantaged youth. What are they doing? They're standing around the pool halls or just loitering on the corners, and it does spawn conditions that could ignite a spark if the wrong thing were done at the right time. There will be a great emphasis placed on leadership training. That is, the employment of block leaders to supervise recreation. We have a recreation department program, but of course they have limited funds and they can't provide all of the supervised recreation that we need. So this will be comprehensive, supervised, designed to develop leadership training that can be capitalized on in the fall.
Therefore, I say that we should be realistic, bring the population variations as close to zero as possible, and this is exactly what this amendment does without affecting a great deal counties that are now together.
It gives the court a valid excuse to redraw the entire map as they see fit, and I don't think that anybody would really benefit by that. I hope that this amendment will be defeated.
I do not see that the lines any more tortuous than perhaps they were on the Senate version of the bill. All these figures are to some degree irregular, and they tend to be more irregular where you have large counties adjacent to each other. And it's rather difficult to consider a bill, ideally, where each county would have the same population. And
obviously, it's going to take a while for these colleges to catch up. But in the meantime, they are turning out graduates who qualify for A certificates, who are going into our public schools, who will now be assigned to teach in any and all public schools in North Carolina. And the way to guarantee that they are competent to do their job as a teacher is, first of all, to guarantee that they are graduates of a top-flight college, whether it's predominantly Negro or predominantly white.
Advisory Budget Commission has suggested if you approve this budget, you will be approving a higher pay increase for the teachers at the predominantly Negro colleges than you do for the other schools of the state. And we think that's proper because they have been behind. We want them to catch up, but it can't be all at once.
We do, for the first time, have a gymnasium. At least we hope we soon will have a gymnasium, which will make it possible for us to have a physical education program. We will have a much larger library facility. We will move rather vigorously into the program of fine arts, music, drama, and art. And for the first time, we'll have students living on the campus 24 hours a day.
Budget, sir, from the budget that has been approved by the General Assembly. In what direction would you say your school would now move so far as the budget that has been approved for the next 2 years?
Well, our movement will be in the direction of, first of all, of developing the organizational structure for the institution, of filling those positions which have been provided for some top leadership positions. We hope to clarify the organizational structure of the institution, and we'll move forward as vigorously as we can to the purchasing of books to the full extent of the appropriations available. And I should add that it's, although our appropriation from the state for library books was more limited than we would have wished, we do have the good fortune of having just received a $57,000 grant from the federal government to supplement our library.